flames rise, consuming books and banners, until Stalin's portrait bends and blackens in the fire. Around the blaze, men stand firm, their silence carrying more weight than 1,000 shouts. You would almost hear the crackle like chains breaking, feel defiance rising with every spark. If you stood here, you would sense fear lifting, yet danger waiting just beyond the smoke. This is Hungary, 1956, where citizens burned Stalin's portrait in open defiance of Soviet rule. The crackling flames engulf the barn as a figure struggles to break free from the searing heat. Heat presses down from every side, and through the smoke, a burnt body remains, frozen in an attempt to escape. The desperate final gesture, hands reaching for freedom, but there is no more life left. Only silence and the roar of fire, leaving the story unfinished. What drove him to fight so hard for survival, only to be consumed by the flames? This image shows the charred corpse of a prisoner, found in a barn set on fire by the Volkssturm and Hitler Youth, Germany, April 1945. The sun glints off the sand as a line of women pose in swimsuits, their laughter blending with the sea breeze. At the edge stands Abby Stockton, her strong frame radiating both joy and power. You would almost hear the surf mix with their laughter, feel the confidence of women breaking into a world once ruled by men. If you stood here, you would sense strength and beauty being redefined. This is Santa Monica, 1946. Abby Stockton, the first woman to own a gym, with stunt double Relna Brewer, and friends, pioneers of women's fitness. Smoke still lingers as soldiers raise a black banner before the shattered Reichstag. The empire that once ruled here has fallen to dust. You would almost hear the crunch of boots on rubble, feel the silence of a city broken under the weight of victory. If you stood here, you would sense triumph, heavy with the price of war. This is May 1945. Soviet soldiers holding their victory banner in front of the destroyed Reichstag after the Battle of Berlin. Men are caught mid-air, bodies flung like ragdolls, helmets and rifles scattering as the night explodes around them. Below, the river churns, fragments of their boats splintering across the dark water. You would almost hear the deafening blast still echoing, the rush of water swallowing shouts, the stunned silence that follows. If you were here, you would feel the line between life and death blur in a heartbeat. Chaos frozen into one impossible image. This is 1942. Australian officers hurled into a river by an accidental explosion. Remarkably, none suffered serious injuries. A flicker of flame lights the stone figure's face, half shadow, half watchful silence. Around it, soldiers crouch low, bare backs glistening, rifles resting against ancient walls. One stirs a pot, another stares into nothing, their breaths heavy in the still air. If you were standing here, you'd feel the weight of hunger and exhaustion pressed against the calm of carved stone. This was Ramri Island, Burma, January 1945. British troops pausing by a Buddhist temple in the middle of war. A rusted shape breaks the surface, lifted by steel and cables after more than a century below. Around it, boats crowd close, watching history rise from the deep. The waves seem to pause, each drop falling from its hull like a memory returning to daylight. Once a daring weapon, now a fragile relic, it carries the weight of another war into the present. This is August 8th, 2000. The recovery of the Confederate submarine H.L. Hunley from Charleston Harbor, 136 years after her sinking. The stadium turned into a place of silence, where even the echo of thousands felt muted. Players stood in disbelief, some with faces buried in their palms, others frozen as grief overwhelmed them. It was not the loss of a match that broke their spirits, but the shattering announcement of a leader's death. Standing here, you would sense a weight pressing against every breath, a sorrow too vast for words. On 4th May, 1980, Yugoslav footballers received the news that President Josip Broz Tito had passed away. A wall of stone stands broken, soldiers clustering on its edge, rifles slung, faces calm. At their feet lie motionless bodies, the silence of death pressed against the noise of victory. The men pose as if for a triumph, yet the ground itself tells another story. Anyone standing here would feel the jarring contrast. Uniforms tidy, postures proud, while civilians lie discarded, like shadows at their boots. The air seems heavy with cruelty left unspoken, the kind history records in whispers more than cheers. This was Edirne in 1913, when Bulgarian soldiers posed beside slain Turkish civilians during the Balkan Wars. The man sits poised, gaze steady, his hand resting on a closed book, as though guarding its secrets. A chain glints faintly across his vest, the stillness of his posture charged with quiet resolve. You'd sense the weight of thought behind those eyes, a mind turning over the shape of a nation's future. The room is plain, the background bare, yet his presence fills it, calm, deliberate, unyielding. It feels as if history itself is holding its breath. This is John Balance, photographed between 1875 and 1889, later the founder of New Zealand's Liberal Party, and by 1891, the country's 14th premier.